Hello and welcome to the Average Australian Podcast, episode 5. I am Chad Tondi. With me is Edin. We are here tonight talking about the PlayStation VR launch. There's also some interesting news regarding the newest Batman Arkham and Resident Evil games. Away from that, we once again touch on No Man's Sky and their seemingly endless list of problems. This one happens to be of a legal nature. There's conversation about Call of Duty, discussion about Infinite Warfare and the remaster of Modern Warfare, with some surprising links between the two of them, it has to be said. We will then go into a quick chat about the 6 games selected for PlayStation Plus subscribers this month. You can actually download them now if you didn't know. And as always, we will end the show with a quick look at the upcoming game releases for this week. All of that and much, much more right to come. With that being said, how are you, Edin?
Very well, very well. How you doing, man?
I am pretty good. It's not been raining, so that's always a positive. Please tell me that you're not still playing Trackmania. Please, when I ask this question, what have you been playing?
Trackmania for the win. Still going with
still?
Trackmania. Yeah, look, I'll probably be playing that game for the next year. And I'm doing good, actually. I'm making good progress into the blue tracks now. Done about...
What's that, like 100 or something?
20 of the blue tracks. Yeah, I'm up to about track 100, actually. I think 97 or something like that. So I'm closing in on
halfway.
Yeah, they're getting a bit tricky now. I think I might have spent about an hour on one track last night.
Really?
So, yeah, it's getting a bit hairy.
Is it like flips and stuff and everything now, or is it like...
Just, yeah, there's flips and like chicanes and some, just some dodgy, very specific jumps that you got to hit. And just Trackmania Turbo madness. But I played a bit of that, and then for whatever reason, just busted out a bit of Black Ops 3 multiplayer as well. Thought I'd get back into that.
Really?
Well, they had the double XP weekend, and I still haven't even hit level 55 on that. So I wanted to at least see if I could get close to hitting prestige on that. But played it for a little bit and then kind of got sick of it pretty quickly. But I guess maybe just some of that Call of Duty talk kind of got me interested in. It's all right, but just kind of got sick of it fairly quickly. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. What about you? What have you been playing?
I spoke about Bloodborne last week and how difficult it was. I actually got past the first boss with co-op, thankfully. And then I've been doing the other bosses, and they're actually relatively easy. I'm up to the last boss now, so the DLC will be done probably tomorrow or something.
Oh, wow. That's pretty fast.
Actually, before we came on and recorded, I saw a Twitter post saying that Outlast 2 demo was launched in Europe. So I've downloaded that.
I just saw that on the store, actually. Yeah. Were you a fan of the first one?
Yeah, I really liked it. I didn't like the DLC much, but I really liked the original. So hopefully number 2 is good. But I'll play that when we finish here.
Was that a PS Plus game?
Yeah.
The first Outlast? I think I've got it in my library. Haven't touched it. Always wanted to play it. I really liked Amnesia, and I think this is kind
Amnesia was good.
Style. But probably a little bit scarier as well. But it's on my list. Still haven't touched it.
You should play it. It's a bit more forces you into certain things. In Outlast, Amnesia was a bit more open, but they're both good games.
Yeah. No, that's. I think might check out the demo at least for the second one.
I think the DLC is like $3 or something. So it's if you like it, it's pretty easy to get more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump straight into the world of virtual reality. PlayStation VR is coming out on October the 13th. That's I think it's 10 days now. It will set you back obviously around $550 Australian. If you haven't pre-ordered already, you will have not much hope of getting a unit now. The demand is pretty high in Australia. In my mind, PlayStation VR sells extremely well. I don't see it flopping in terms of purely a sale point of view. The question remains obviously on its longevity, on whether it evolves into something that's doesn't just showcase tech demos, can full games transition successfully, etc. I know you're not the biggest advocate of PlayStation VR, but what's your thoughts on it releasing soon? Are you excited? Has it been a title that has interested you at all?
Now that it's kind of getting close to release and a few sort of articles have started coming out, and you can see the titles coming up on the PlayStation Store. And today there was a bit of an FAQ on the Sony PlayStation website, just kind of going over all, what's in the box and all this sort of stuff and how does it work. And I have to say, I'm kind of a little bit interested in it now and probably a little bit excited for it. I think you're right. It certainly won't flop because I don't know how strong the demand is, but I'm guessing that there's probably not going to be that much of a unit allocation for Australia anyway. So there's definitely enough people for whatever they're going to allocate for Australia.
The first shipment is sold out everywhere, but you don't know how much the first shipment is, right? So maybe it could just be like 4,000. You just don't know. But
I think so. I don't think it's going to be. It's not going to do massive numbers, but simply because I think supply will be limited. But like you said, whatever is going to be out there is going to get sold out for sure. It has been sold out for sure. Definitely getting a little bit excited for it. And I guess some of those talked about where Resident Evil VR is going to be a timed exclusive for 12 months. The Batman Arkham VR is going to be a timed exclusive as well. You've got that Rigs mechanical combat or whatever it is. Yeah, the esports game that actually looks pretty cool. So I have to say I'm kind of getting a little bit excited for it, and I'm definitely keen to see how it launches and what those titles are like.
It's so weird that like there's no bundle in Australia. Like you look at Europe and America, they come with like 15 demos and all these like sort of like an hour experiences and stuff. And Australia has nothing. Like you've got to buy.
So there's no bundle.
Not in Australia, from my understanding. It's like $5.50 for the unit, and that doesn't even come with the camera and that.
Yeah, that's right. So I think there's two bundles in United States, isn't there?
There is.
Just your PlayStation VR, and then you've got the PlayStation VR with the camera and the Move controllers.
And there's that game, I forget its name, but
there's like what is it, like a VR Worlds kind of one of those kind of demos. But just having a read of the FAQ, so there's some cool stuff there where there's going to be like the cinema mode where you can watch movies with your VR on, as sort of gives you that cinematic display. I think you'll be able to even just play all games like that, as in the VR will just be like a display. It'll just be your screen
playing a game like on your computer.
That, it's kind of got me a little bit interested, and then they're talking about how you'll be able to obviously output to a TV so people can play along. There's even like I think a few of those like demos or whatever you're talking about, where people can actually
mode where they can see what you're doing, and
that's right. But I think some of them even tie into the game like that, where it's kind of like that Wii U. One person's got the tablet, but other people can still play along with just normal controllers or something like that. And I think being a PlayStation product, this definitely looks like it's going to be the most rounded VR experience. Sony are in the business of making games. They know video games. They know their demographic. And I think this is going to be the most sort of rounded, complete.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be.
The price is fair?
Oh, look, Australia always gets a little bit shafted when it comes to pricing. And like you said, the allocation sold out, so they know, whatever they price it at, people are going to pay for it. But like you said, the fact that there's no bundle, Australia always gets a little bit screwed over there. But you also got to remember that the Australian dollar isn't as strong as it used to be. And in the grand scheme of things, Australia is not a big market, compared to America, but even, compared to Europe, where PlayStation brand has always been strong. Australia is not that big a market for them. But
what concerns me about VR, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but I was thinking about it with, I was writing the article about the PS Plus games from October. I wonder what impact VR has on PlayStation Plus, because you get 2 PS4 games, you get 2 Vita, you get 2 PS3. I'm assuming the majority of players aren't playing PS3 games at all, right? So essentially it's 4 games. If 2 of the PS4 games become a VR title, which is like an hour experience, that is going to make me so annoyed.
I can't see that happening early on, just because they got to get their money back on VR. I think the install base is so small. It's not going to happen unless it's a game that also has a VR mode or has a VR add-on. I can't see them cutting down the PS4 titles down to one and making one a VR game, simply because whatever VR title is in the works now, I think is, you know, the launch titles, developers have probably spent a lot of time and money on it. They got to get their money back. Second of all, the install base isn't there. I can't see it happening for a while, maybe down the track. But I would say also don't dismiss the PS3. I mean, is coming out on PS3 and Xbox 360 for another year. Yeah, I mean,
is it the last year?
I don't know, because those consoles. See, it's not like I think with the PS2 and the Xbox where they really started looking like junk towards the end of the life cycle. I mean, PS3 and Xbox 360 are still going pretty strong.
To me, it's not even the graphics; it's the controller. I hate the plastic light feel of the PS3 controller.
Yeah, look, it wasn't the best controller, but I think God knows how many PS3s are out there now, and you know, people still haven't. And that's the thing. I think people are complaining with PlayStation Plus, so there's not enough, you know, AAA titles or whatever, because they got used to all the awesome games that were coming out on the PS3, PS Plus towards the end of its life cycle.
Yeah.
So I think you'll start seeing more of those as the PS4 gets older, but PS3 is still going strong. I think there'll still be good titles for it. Maybe they'll cut down one PS3 title or one Vita title and chuck in a VR title here and there, but I just don't think there's enough VR titles out yet. I think whatever comes out, they're really going to want to maximize sales on it.
Yeah.
But
don't you think giving away VR titles entices people to get a VR?
Not necessarily, because, well, for one, even if they did, would you even be able to get one in Australia before Christmas?
Well, I mean, how much do we factor into the decisions? Though, honestly, it's more American, right?
Yeah, exactly. I can't see it happening. I don't think in the early stages. Well, I mean, they'll see how well it sells and how big the demand is for it.
Yeah.
But I think in the early days, it's going to be a product that'll be in demand, and I think they won't need to push it too hard because that initial uptake will be, the early adopters are always there, and even if they charge whatever Sony charge for it, it'll sell. So I don't think they'll need to push it. It's when that first wave has got it, they've played that first batch of titles, and drops off, that's when VR is going to get put to the test, I think, because that's when it's going to be interesting. Because like I said, from where I'm looking, the Vive and the Oculus, they're kind of just, there's not much going on there at the moment.
It's just the entry cost, right? It's so expensive to get involved in it. That's where the PlayStation has a huge advantage.
That's right. And so you don't need a beefy PC or a graphics card. You got your PS4, the VR headset and all that is cheaper as well. It looks like a better launch because you got your Resident Evils, you've got your Until Dawn, you know, you've got franchises that you've got more.
What's your thoughts on Resident Evil getting the exclusivity for 12 months? I actually think that's a huge deal because that game's been hyped up. You know, when it was originally in the kitchen, that game was hyped up. And to have that on their console for an entire year, I mean, obviously PC and Microsoft gamers get the base game. But when you can say this game will be on VR from start to finish, that's a huge selling point of a unit of a product.
Yeah, I think it is, and that's what I was saying. You know, the Oculus and the Vive launches were very gimmicky, and they had a lot of sort of experiences and tech demos. No, and that's where I think PlayStation, they're a video. You know, Sony are a video game company. They know video games. They've got the franchises, so it's going to draw people in more when they go, oh yeah, Resident Evil. I know Resident Evil. Oh, I know Batman.
Yep.
You know, and now that's in VR. That's a system seller to an extent, whereas those kind of, you know, I don't even know the stuff that was on Oculus or Vive, you know, there was like some rock climbing game made by Crytek. Do you know what I mean? Like it looks cool and it's probably fun when you play it the first time, but it's not Resident Evil that gamers
it's not marketable, right?
Recognize. That's right. So, you know, I think that they've got the titles, they've got the franchises. I think that'll help them out a lot. how much remains to be seen, but I think it'll be a strong launch.
Have you looked at Batman? Because they came out with information earlier today. Rocksteady said that the core narrative would be 60 minutes to complete and added 90 minutes of additional gameplay once you finish your first playthrough. They also mentioned that it'll be a murder mystery in the style of classic Batman comics, which I really like. I guess the question is 2.5 hours long enough for a VR title, and is the price point? It says $20 American, so that's probably what, 30 Australian? Is that good enough for 2 hours, 3 hours worth of like VR?
Yeah, I mean, you'll pay $20-30 for some indie titles on Steam as well and things like that, and you've got to factor in that again, it's launch. Yeah. They're always going to sting you for it. So $20-30, like I said, that's probably a title that maybe 6 months from now is free on PlayStation Plus.
It could be.
That's the kind of title. But I think it looks slightly gimmicky, but also probably down to do something there where it's not just like, oh, hey, play Batman in VR or something like that. They're actually kind of, and they're going for that kind of detective element where I guess they're slowing it down and they're going to give you some, I guess, an opportunity to use some of those gadgets maybe and analyze crime scenes and do some of that detective stuff. So at first I thought it might be gimmicky.
Too gimmicky, yeah.
Yeah, now I'm thinking like it could be all right. Like, yeah, a couple of hours, but, you know, it's probably more tech demo and more kind of an experience. But again, it's Batman and it's, you know what I mean? So straight away it's a franchise that people recognize.
Especially with Rocksteady behind it.
And, you know, if you were to buy VR, then probably everyone in your family would be able to kind of play it and have a go at it.
Connects to Batman at some level, right? Like it's obviously a big
culture. That's right. So I think that's not a bad one. The Resident Evil, I don't know how that'll play. Is that just you're going to be playing Resident Evil 7, but in first person through VR or something like that? I don't know.
I think the whole game's first person, isn't it? Regardless, like.
Oh, really? So
you know, have you played the demo?
Has that been confirmed?
The demo is like first person.
Well, yeah, but that's right. But the demo is that actually anything to do with the game, or is that more just like?
No, I'm pretty sure it's a level in the game.
Marketing. Okay, well.
I'm pretty certain.
I can't see them moving away from over-the-shoulder third person for Resident Evil. No way.
Really? I'd be very surprised if you see your character at all.
Or in VR, it might be that you play it in first person. I think the regular game will be a third person over-the-shoulder shooter. It has to be. We
can have a bet. I bet you it isn't. I bet you it's first person.
I'm willing to put money down on that because I think it'll be, if you play VR, it'll zoom you in and make it a first-person game. I think if you're not playing it in VR, it's an over-the-shoulder third-person game. Has to be. It's Resident Evil. It has to be.
Yeah, I don't know. If I saw combat, I'd agree with you, but the fact that I haven't seen combat makes me think that, like, it's going to be first-person, like, interactive more than it is.
My thinking is just that demo is more just like something separate to the game, kind of like the PT thing was for you know, that Silent Hills game that never came out. I think it's more just kind of advertising and trying to get you into the mood of, you know, it's conveying the feel of the game and things like that. But I think it definitely has to be a third person over the shoulder shooter. But back to your point, I think that's a big win for PlayStation because like you said, that's the kind of title that's going to draw people in, and if that's a good game, if that game delivers and it plays well in VR, then that's like an actual compelling reason to have VR instead of these.
If it gets like a 7 out of 10, if it gets like a 6.5, 7 out of 10, I think like VR is going to make it relevant anyway. Like I think in some respect it's going to succeed purely based off it being from start to end, like the first like big AAA title.
It plays well.
Yeah.
Plays well and doesn't have any sort of obvious problems, you know, that it makes people nauseous or, you know, has some sort of, you know, basic control issues or something like that. Yeah. You know, it it could be a 7 out of a 10 game normal, and then if you played in VR, all of a sudden it's an 8 out of 10 because, like you said, now you're in first person and the creepiness goes up, and all the jump scares and things like that. So so that could actually, like I said, that could actually boost it. But it's definitely a big get for Sony, and this is probably enough time then to still be able to get it on Scorpio when that launches. That might, I think Capcom have played it well there. They've probably got a bit of money out of Sony, keep it exclusive to Sony for 12 months.
Yeah, I don't get the 5 months for Batman. That seems like such an odd time, like March 31st. What even happens then? Like,
oh, look, I think they'll just probably want to launch it on Oculus and even I think for that it's not it's not a fully fledged title. It's a few hours. It'll give people time to play it on PlayStation and then let people experience it, and then at that point, maybe it goes free on PS Plus for a month or something like that. When by March of next year, that kind of everyone who's wanted to get a PSVR will probably have got one.
Would have it. Yeah, it's a good point.
And now they're looking at that next batch of trying to get the next round of sales through. Maybe they give it, they'll bundle it free or something like that. So it's not a big deal, the fact that one's free, exclusive for a bit shorter time. I think the Resident Evil, that's a big get. 12 months, that's big news for Sony, I think.
So overall, excited about VR a bit more now, but
I think so. I mean, look, I'm not going to get one because, like I said, I haven't pre-ordered it. Got no chance of getting one now. But I'm actually
at Christmas there might be bundles, right? So when there's more stocks there, it might be a good time to get on board if there's like big good reviews.
That's right, but again, like, would I, do I want to get one or do I want to get a PS Pro?
Yeah, I'd rather the Pro personally.
At that stage, and I think VR is not going anywhere. It's only just launched. Even if Resident Evil is amazing, that will probably be like the only compelling reason to get it still. Yeah. So I'm happy.
Well, that's not even till Feb, right? So
yeah, right. So it's one of those things. I think you'd get it for Christmas. You'll play it for a while. You'll go through all those different experiences and things. And
it's like Nintendo Wii and Wii Sports.
Exactly. You'll be waiting for that next killer product. So I'm not in a rush to get it, but I'm actually a little bit excited for it now. And I really want to see how that Riggs game comes out and a few of those other titles. I'm actually keen to see how they go.
Well, if you're cool with that being the discussion for VR, we're going to move on to everyone's favorite game. And that game is, have a guess.
Let me think. The Last Guardian.
No Man's Sky.
Oh, No Man's Sky. Are we talking about that again? What's going on there?
Where to begin? Okay, so we spoke last week about Sony's response to, the PR strategy and the hype train and all that. And then no more than 6 hours after we recorded the podcast, news broke that the UK's ADA, which is, the Advertising Standards Authority, they confirmed the news that there's been an investigation launched into the, complaints of false advertising. But to be fair, the complaint is more detailed at the Steam page than the game itself, like the trailers and the screenshots used to sell the game to customers. So what's your thoughts on everything that's happened? Obviously, you saw that Jeff Keighley YouTube live interview. What did you think of his words?
Yeah, No Man's Sky is just the story that won't
just
go
doesn't
away.
Die, right?
It doesn't die, but to be fair, it is probably one of the biggest stories of the year in terms of the hype that game got and then what's happened since it's come out. So I guess we do have to keep talking about it. First, with the advertising, I don't think that's actually the first time that's happened where the UK has kind of gone after titles on that. I remember Aliens Colonial Marines was like a big one. Yep. There was a kerfuffle about that because that was
a Killzone game too, right? I think.
Yeah, I think so. And it probably makes sense that they're going after the Steam page more than anything because an E3 trailer, it's not really advertising in a way.
It's not where you purchase the game either.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it is advertising the game, but in the strictest sense of the word, that it's not actually an ad, that's been paid for and shown on TV or something like that. So as far as the advertising commission's concerned, they probably can't, it's a trailer that was shown at a press conference or whatever. That's not enough for them to go after it. Whereas the Steam page, they can go after, and that's an easy fix. Valve will just force us to change the trailers or whatever. So that's not a big deal. But it goes to show you that you can't just kind of show whatever. You've got to the game has to, what you're showing has to reflect what's in the game, and like that brings us back to Aliens, Colonial Marines. They got busted for that because some of those screenshots and renders and things like that they showed the game was nothing like it.
But what does getting busted? What does getting busted even mean? Like from a game point of view, the game doesn't like stop production. It's just like a fine, right? And like it's not a
it's a fine. And I think I can't remember which it might have been Killzone, the one that you were talking about, or there was another one, or maybe it was even Aliens, Colonial Marines, where basically they had to, whenever they ran an ad for the game, they basically had to say something like, the screenshots do not reflect the game or something like that. You know what I mean? So they might just have to say that. Either on the Steam page, they'll have to fix the screenshots and trailers and remove them and put new ones up, or they're just going to have to put like a big piece of text over the trailer that says, this trailer shows nothing that's in the game. You know what I mean? Like they're going to have to do something about it. So, and they might cop a fine or something like that as well. That's if they're even found guilty or whatever it is. But it's not the first time that it's ever happened in video games. And that kind of, brings us back to that whole point of, the hype and people buying into the hype and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, what it goes to show you is that no matter if people are buying into the hype or, they're pre-ordering games that they shouldn't be pre-ordering or whatever it is, at the end of the day, there's a reasonable expectation from a consumer, whether they're a gamer or reading a book or whatever, that show you something. There's a reasonable expectation that you can believe that that's actually going to be in the game.
That's why I agree with what you said last week. Like, consumers have to research, right? You can't just go into a game without any sort of like notion of what it is and then cry wolf when it's not what you expected it to be, right? But
that's right.
At the same token, developers have to be honest. Like, you can't spend 2 years promoting a game that isn't the game that you're actually selling. Like, so I understand both ways, but like, it just doesn't seem to be enough to say, well, consumers should know better. Like at some point, the biggest sin for me is he's quiet in being silent after the fact.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Jeff Keighley video that was on YouTube just recently on his new show on the YouTube gaming channel, that was actually really interesting because, I mean, Jeff Keighley's a pretty sort of powerful personality in the industry.
It's so interesting that he actually like announced the game too. Like he's the guy that kicked it off.
So on that video, he was actually quite honest. He was saying he was sort of there from the get-go. He was sort of across all that stuff from the early days, from when they launched the game, and he was, talking with the team throughout their development. And he was actually kind of a bit skeptical and a bit critical of them in the early days, to the point where I think he was saying that Sean Murray, kind of told him like, oh, you're being too negative or whatever. And
that seems like a bit of like head in the clouds, doesn't it? Like mentality for him to not accept that and see where he's coming from.
That's right. And, Keighley kind of acknowledged his place in it all. And then he kind of called them out on it. But I think he was actually quite pragmatic in the way he went about it. He kind of called them out, but without sort of attacking them and leaving the door open there. And apparently, he's saying that maybe they're going to come on and talk about the development of that game and maybe address some concerns and things like that. So it looks like maybe there will be an opportunity for people to actually find out exactly what went on and for everybody to kind of clear the air.
Can Sean Murray clear the air at this point? I just feel like...
I think maybe that's why he will come out on something like Keighley's show, where it's kind of like he's not just going to go on Reddit and get like pummeled, you know, and then ask me anything and just get trolled. You know, he'll be on there like with a presenter who will ask him questions, you know, in a journalistic manner and things like that. And he'll be like,
YouTube gaming thing has like a live audience component though, so I wonder if they'll actually ask questions at all.
That's right, but well, it didn't look very sort of hostile or anything like that. And Keeley kind of addressed on that. Yeah, well, on that segment, he kind of showed that, you know, that Peter Molyneux video from way back when, where it was that same sort of thing, just like people hyping up these games.
Did that game even come out?
I think, was that Black and White? I think that was Black and White on PC.
When I saw it, it looked like it, but like Black and White was all about like a god, like controlling animals. I didn't see the animals at all.
No, I think this was maybe this was probably yeah. Well, I don't even know what that was.
Black and White was an amazing game. I loved that.
Yeah, look, and a lot of and No Man's Sky has a lot of amazing qualities as well. But I think his point was just that it doesn't, you know, it didn't meet the things that they said it would do.
He called it unfinished and repetitive, right? Which is like what early access game should have started as and then grown with the community.
He made the good point there that should have probably been an early access game. And the fact that they kind of got pushed into releasing like a disc
boxed version,
full price product. And like I said, how much of it was that Sony pushing them as well a little bit? And it's just, the entire thing is just a mess. Like it's just a mess, and everybody's kind of got a little bit of blood on their hands, so to speak. But at the end of the day, you know, everything that's been covered, one thing is clear: you can't just, you know, the games industry has this bad habit of just like showing these things that just have no basis in reality. And Sony have been done on it like a million times. You know, way back in the PS3, I think when they did the first PS3 video, they showed like MotorStorm, and it was all CGI. It was like it was a MotorStorm video, and it was CGI, and they were trying to pass it off as like, oh yeah, 1080p, 60 frames a second, check out the graphics. It was all CGI.
I think Sony's learned from that. You've seen like they focus on gameplay videos now at E3 and all that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, except now, like with No Man's Sky, like they kind of did.
To be fair, they're a third party, right?
That you know. So, but again, they kind of got caught up in it a little bit.
It's like Watch Dogs, right? They like chose to do that.
And you know, like the Watch Dogs and all that sort of stuff. It's like you can't just show this stuff and then it just has nothing like it in the actual finished product. Yeah. They need to get caught. That practice kind of just needs to be curtailed a bit. Of course, people need to just keep their hype in check and be a bit skeptical, but that doesn't mean you can just show whatever.
Whose job is it to contain that? Is it the developers like, you know, like Sony? I mean, the developers like Sony, Microsoft, or is it journalists that are covering the game? Do they like have a responsibility to call them out and to be honest with, you know?
Yeah, I think everybody's implicit in that, because probably these so-called journalists aren't asking the tough questions and actually saying it, like, is this going to be in the game? What are you running this demo on? You know, is this are these assets specially created for the demo, or is this part of the game? You know, is this running on a PC? All these sort of things. And then, like you said, when the game comes out and it's nothing like what was shown in the demo, there's outrage from the internet, but you know, you don't see IGN and GameSpot and these guys kind of like doing too much to sort of question it. No. And that's just this whole discussion of like games journalism. Like, you know, that's why I think some people question it. They go, well, is it really journalism when you're not actually like critiquing anything? Or do you know what I mean? Like I was watching, they had the Gears of War 4, some footage has now been released from the Horde mode and some single player campaign stuff from Gears of War 4. And there was actually an IGN video going through the Horde mode that they'd been playing at the Gears of War 4 developers studio. And they basically, like the guy voicing over it from IGN was like, oh yeah, we revealed the Horde mode or something like that. Well, it's not like you just somehow like heard about it and did all this investigation. It's like they told you they told you only, and then you put it up on your website, basically posting, you know, a press release as news or journalism or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So,
and what sort of like agreement is being made for IGN to get that coverage? Like, are they saying you can show the game, but you can't talk about X, Y, and Z? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's right. Or you can't criticize it or something like that. So that's
isn't
one
that
of
their
the things
job?
I've
If they're
seen.
journalists, they should be criticizing, and there should not be like a relationship that benefits from each other in that sense.
That's right. And you know, that's the whole thing. Like, are these people really journalists? You know, when you see some of those articles on Kotaku or something like that, yeah, that's journalism, where they're actually like digging into a few things or writing opinion pieces or editorials and stuff like that. But by you posting news that the developer told you exclusively, like, wow, you revealed the horde mode of, you know, we broke that news. Well, great. You know, they're just using you as like a mouthpiece for their video game. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it only becomes relevant to me if then they break that gameplay down into like the technical aspects and what they think is, you know.
Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, that's still a service. Like, I want to hear about it, and I want to know what features are in it, and I want to see the footage of it. But don't treat yourself like you're, you know, writing for the Washington Post. Like, oh, you broke the story. Like, great, you know, it's a horde mode in Gears of War 4. Like, we pretty much knew it was going to be there. Like, it was going to come out eventually. So, and that's the interesting thing. You know, I've seen some of the YouTube videos that have just sort of been, you know, like the stuff like for Mafia 3, and now saw some like for FIFA 17 and stuff from like the YouTube influencers and these kind of guys.
You see the Mafia got an embargo? Are you worried about that?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. But what I was just going to say was with these YouTube videos, it's interesting. Now at the start of the video, these guys like explicitly say, I was invited by EA to the FIFA 17 exclusive event.
YouTube makes them.
They paid for
that.
Yeah, they paid for my flight. They paid for my accommodation and all my meals while I was there.
Yep.
Now let's get on with it. Maybe it's time for, like, you know, IGN and GameSpot and a few of these companies, maybe they need to start doing a few of those things as well and go, yeah, we were invited by Microsoft to the Gears of War studio, and they paid for our flight and our accommodation. Like, get it out of the way, and then we can talk about your views and things like that. So
that's how you gain respect, is like journalistically.
That's right. But look, I mean, that's just like this massive discussion that we could debate for.
Yeah, it could be its own
forever.
podcast,
and
right?
Of course, and it could be its own years worth of podcast. I mean, that's like, but we can touch on it at least and get a few of those points out the way. Mafia 3, I'm not worried. I think that game's probably like a 7 out of 10. And yeah, I think they just kind of, I don't know if they're trying to not spoilers out there, or they kind of maybe, you know, there will be some negative probably comments, you know, it's repetitive, or, you know, there's some jank, there's some open world jank and things like that. So I don't take that the fact that there's no reviews beforehand as a negative per se. But I don't think that game was ever going to be a 10 out of 10 or whatever anyway. I think it's more just like, it's going to be a fun open world game, hopefully. I don't think it was ever going to be more than that. So they're probably just kind of, I don't know what they're thinking behind that is. But so many games don't get those
embargoes,
pre-release reviews anymore. Yeah, there's, you know, Destiny was like that, and so many titles. So what they're thinking behind it is, because probably, like, if it was kind of a bit of a hidden gem of a game or something like that, you think maybe they would try to get that hype out there,
like a demo
and get
or something.
But maybe, you know, look, again, it just brings you back. This is the whole thing about, you know, all this sort of stuff is games have a very limited shelf life, right? Especially if they're not good. And you know what I mean? Like, they're not like movies. I mean,
there's a short relevant window of like a game release.
So if Mafia 3 pre-orders are affected by poor reviews or middling reviews or whatever, man, that game could be dead in the water. Because maybe, you know, they need to sell 3 million to break even. They've got 1 million or 500,000 pre-orders, the reviews come out, they all give it 6 out of 10.
We're going to talk about this
People
later,
cancel
but
it.
like it's releasing in a competitive like week. There's like a big
it's a big exactly, and this is the thing. So you look at movies flop at the cinema, but then they get a second lease of life on DVD or whatever. A lot of movies have become like absolute classics on DVD.
Yeah, bombed just in the box office. Like
you look at like Fight Club or something like that. That's just like a legendary movie.
Even TV shows like Firefly, right?
Exactly.
That bombed, and then
exactly. TV shows, movies, or you look at music. How many people still listen to, I don't know, AC/DC or Guns N' Roses or whatever? Like those albums still sell. Yep. People don't go, I'm just, I'm going to go buy this classic PlayStation 2 game because you can't, because people don't have the consoles anymore. And even if they wanted to, they couldn't, you can't go back and play them for one. And two, games look old, they look dated, the gameplay mechanics have changed, people have moved on, especially if they're online games or multiplayer games, the community's not there and things like that. So they've got a really short window of opportunity to maximize their sales, especially for these kind of titles like Mafia 3 that I think you'll find as game development gets more advanced and more expensive, those kind of mid-tier games are being squeezed out. Because you look at like PS2 or Xbox 360 era, there were so many of those middle-of-the-road games, just kind of, like average third-person action adventure, shooter, whatever. They're all gone now. Like it's either Call of Duty sell 10 million or indie title. Like there's no in between. And so Mafia 3 is kind of like one of those in between games. And like you said, the big releases are starting to hit. If they don't maximize their pre-orders, that's it. Whatever they sell between now and Christmas, I mean, maybe they might sell a few more around Christmas when people go back to looking at games and things, but between now and November, whatever they sell in the first week or two is pretty much everything, because once Battlefield and Call of Duty and all these games come out, like, you're finished. So for probably a projected 6.5 like Mafia 3, they can't afford those 6.5 reviews to be known because they're finished.
It just seems weird that embargo works the other way though, right? Because you're not showing the public the game and they're not being able to read about, what the game is. So there needs to be a sort of bit of confidence in your title where you can, put it out.
That's right.
Back it.
That's right. Yeah. And like you said, straight away, as soon as people hear that it's not being released early, people all of a sudden know it's going to be
must be something wrong with it.
People start getting worried already, like whether it is or it isn't. And I don't know, maybe there's just like some massive day one patch that they need to get out, or who knows what their thinking is. But my thinking is it's probably just like, it's an all right game. But
you're still getting a day one?
I don't know now. I don't know now. I still want to play it. I think it looks like a lot of fun. But I might just hold off on that first day now. See how the reviews pan out, because if it's a 4 out of 10, then I'll be very upset.
Yeah, I hope not. Mafia 1 was.
I don't think so, but yeah, who knows?
So I want to talk about Call of Duty for a second. I'll be honest, when I first saw Infinite Warfare at E3, I thought it looked amazing. I didn't think it was a Call of Duty game at all. Like the way that PlayStation showed it, almost looked like a VR title. Like, how you jumped in the ship and then you flew off into space and all that.
Yeah.
Since then, I've seen like multiplayer game footage, and that's looked more like the traditional Call of Duty game. I still like the high tech, the grappling hook, and being able to bounce around. But do you have any thoughts on Infinite Warfare, like Call of Duty in general?
Look, it's and I've been a big fan of Call of Duty throughout the years. I've played Call of Duty from way back when on the original World War II games on PC. I remember those games were great, Call of Duty and Call of Duty 2, and then obviously Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, awesome game. Played a lot of that. And then even Modern Warfare 2, I thought was really, really
That was
good.
the game I was into the most, I think, like hours
yeah,
played.
like the Spec Ops stuff on that was awesome. And now it's kind of, they just, they went Modern Warfare, Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare. They've got the Black Ops series still going as well, but I think dwindling, but they always deliver a solid campaign. They always deliver a solid campaign, generally speaking. Maybe Ghosts was the one that was really a bit of a flop, and that was the one that kind of set the franchise back a little bit. But I think since then, I haven't played them all, but they've all kind of got pretty good reviews in terms of the campaign and the multiplayer.
Do you think it's fair to compare it to like FIFA and that sort of like fatigue of like you get it so often that at some point it starts to feel the same? Though I will say Call of Duty puts more effort into being a bit different, right, than FIFA does, obviously.
They do. They try and mix it up. But there is that fatigue, and I think when Ghost came out, that kind of really they were building, and those games were just absolutely huge. And then Ghost came out, kind of it was a bit of a downer, that game that put a spanner in the works, and they've kind of gone. I think the sales have gone down, but the quality's still been there. They always deliver a good experience. Like I said, it always looks good. Always runs smooth, nice graphics, big. It always
surprises me how many people buy it for single player. Like in my mind, it's always been a multiplayer game. Like I'd never buy it just for single player, but so many do.
Oh yeah, and it's a fun little single player campaign. Like it's only probably like a 4 to 6 hours, maybe 8 hours. But you look at what you get on that disc. You get the single player, you get the multiplayer, and then you get like your zombies mode or your Spec Ops or whatever. Like it's always a good value proposition.
Chad says no to zombies, by the way. I've had enough.
Yeah, look, and I never got into the zombie mode that the Black Ops stuff introduced. It was always just like really super weird, and I was never a big fan of it. I love the Spec Ops, Modern Warfare 2, the Spec Ops stuff was just awesome. Yeah. I remember my mate and I think we got like gold medals on all of that stuff. Like that was so much fun. Like some of them were super hard, but that was awesome. The zombie stuff, I never really liked it, but I have enjoyed the single player games. It's fun to an extent. Like you said, probably now, Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2, I think I prestiged multiple times. Now it's kind of like I'm struggling to even get to level 55. I'm starting to sort of struggle to care.
You ever looked at the platinum trophies? Do they follow a similar path as like the prestige, or is it a bit different?
Well, generally they've always been single player affairs where you pretty much had to beat the campaign up to veteran difficulty, which was some like incredibly brutal stuff. As of Black Ops 3, I know that they've thrown in like a few zombie mode trophies. Getting to level 55 is a trophy, and a couple of other multiplayer ones as well. And then they sort of throw in some single player stuff there where like each level had certain challenges. And if you did every challenge of every level, that would get you a trophy as well, which I think is probably the hardest one in the game. But to the news story, I guess that kind of got us talking about this was, that I think it was probably already pretty much, I think most people expected it. But now it's kind of just been confirmed like, you need to have the Infinite Warfare disc when you're playing the Modern Warfare remaster.
The confusion, I think the confusion was because people assumed you could get the remaster by itself. And they're like, well, if you can buy it by yourself, then why do you need the Infinite Warfare disc? You know what I mean?
I think people were hoping that you would be able to, and this kind of confirmed that, like, no, you can't, because, like I said, the sales for Call of Duty have been dropping, and the last thing Activision want to do is
alienate the player base even more, right?
Well, and kill Infinite Warfare by just saying like, here's a $15 download for Modern Warfare, and then watching that take off. Because there's so much nostalgia for that game and like a fair bit of hype for it as well. Now they're saying like, you'll get it, but you got to buy Infinite Warfare, and then obviously, to stop people basically just buying Infinite Warfare, getting the code for Modern Warfare, and then flogging the Infinite Warfare disc at game, EB Games or whatever, secondhand, and create, flooding the market with secondhand Infinite Warfare discs.
Are you annoyed that like the base game doesn't get it though? It has to be like the Legacy or Pro edition.
Yeah, and look, some of those Call of Duty editions, and then Battlefield tried to copy them as well. With they're just super expensive, man. Like some of them, I think, to get that deluxe edition, and then you've got the one with the season pass or whatever, you're looking at like $160 probably, or something like that, maybe even more. It's just insane. Like,
so that's when your typical Australian game is like 69 at Target and Big W, you're paying like what, $35 for a remaster, right?
Yeah, that's right. And look, to be fair, a lot of people still, a lot of people love Call of Duty, and for a lot of people, that's probably like their only game. They'll just get like that. FIFA. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you'll just play the shit out of that, or Christmas, New Year break, summer holidays, whatever it is. And you'll get good value for money. Like I said, you'll get a good single player campaign. You'll get the multiplayer, which just to get to level 55, you're looking at, 20, 30 hours, whatever it is. And then you got your zombie mode or whatever as well. Like, value for it. And then, if you're paying $130 and you get Modern Warfare Remaster as well, it's still probably like a pretty good value proposition. But I just think because the sales for Call of Duty have been kind of slipping and stuff like that, Activision want the Modern Warfare Remaster to boost sales of Infinite Warfare, not kill it off by just being a competing product. So they kind of they're using it as a way to get people to get back into Infinite Warfare. They can't just have it standing alone and basically killing their Call of Duty franchise.
You tempted at all to get it? Like, I was impressed with the single player, but I've never really been that into like the multiplayer.
Yeah, look, the single player campaigns are always fun, big set pieces and things like that, but they are super linear and they're just kind of shooting gallery stuff.
It's like an action movie, right? You're just playing through it.
Yeah, pretty much. And look, I wasn't even tempted for Black Ops 3, but in the end I picked it up and it was good fun. Again, like I said, those games, you can't really fault them, and they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, they got to keep changing and tweaking and evolving and things like that, but then they can't change it too much because it's Call of Duty. Like, it's got its core things. Like, otherwise, there's Battlefield, there's Destiny, there's all these other games. Call of Duty is what it is. So they kind of stuck there as well. So they can refine and tweak and change, but only within that
universe.
Yeah. So, there's just too much stuff coming out now. I don't think I'll pick it up straight away. And that's probably been their problem, is that Call of Duty is no longer that must-have title that it was back in the Xbox 360 days. But maybe at some point I'll still probably play it because it's a quality title. There's you apart from, I think, Ghosts, none of the Call of Duty games have ever really been bad or anything like that. So I think it'll be a good game. It's just, it's no longer that killer title that it used to be.
Well, it used to be like where you'd want to get it day one so you don't fall behind with the unlocks, but like people do prestige, so like guns are resetting like all the time anyway. So like you're always like competitive enough like, with your unlocks and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And it used to be that this was the game. And even back when, Modern Warfare 2, like, there weren't that many multiplayer games. There wasn't that much.
Battlefield, COD.
You had COD, but you didn't, and you had World of Warcraft and things like that, but you didn't just have like a million different multiplayer games that people cared about that you do now. So there's, like I said, there's still people that love their Call of Duty, but the numbers are dwindling. So unless you're really, really hardcore, there's probably not that need to pick it up. And like you said, there's just so much stuff coming out at the moment. It's just insane. Like, the flood is about to begin pretty much. It is.
Yeah. Before we go into the games that are coming out this week, with PS Plus, I wrote an article about the lineup, explained what the new games are a little bit. So the 6 games for people that don't know is Resident Evil, which is the remaster for Resident Evil 1. We've got Transformers Devastation, which is like a punch it up. I really like that it's done in like a comic style. Visually, it's really good. Mad Riders is just your typical dirt racer on the PS3. From Dust is like what we mentioned before, like black and white, similar to like a god manipulation type of thing. Code Realize Guardian of Rebirth is an anime romance visual novel. You're like an actual female protagonist who can't be touched, but then she like falls in love with like one of these 6 guys. And finally is Actual Sunlight, which is on the Vita, and it's like this 2D social. It's like this guy that's like depressed, going through like day after day of the same job, and it's just like like a visual representation of what depression is and what someone who's going through it lives like. So with any of those titles, you playing any of them? Are you interested in the lineup? What's your like feeling about it?
Oh, it's a pretty good lineup. I think people have been pretty down on PS Plus for a while now. That it hasn't delivered the big titles. Every month people are just complaining, it's another indie title or whatever. So this is like a pretty good value proposition, I think. Yeah, and look, they've just put the price up in America now, PS Plus as well. So when you look at it like that, you say like it's not a bad lineup. So Resident Evil, I've bought that and haven't actually played it yet.
Oh, you bought the remaster?
Yeah. So I think it's actually it's a remaster of the
an upscale remaster. Oh, because the original came out on GameCube.
I think it was remastered or remade on the GameCube from the original PlayStation 1 title, and now this is like a remaster of that remake.
The GameCube. Yeah, that's right.
And people say it's actually really good. And it was on sale a while ago, and I still haven't actually got around to playing it. So a little bit disappointed that I went out and bought it and didn't actually play it. But Transformers Devastation, I wanted to play for a while as well. That looks awesome. Kind of that Metal Gear Rising Revengeance kind of hack and slash kind of game. That looks really good.
It's a bit like Bayonetta in the it's like action. Like
that's right. It's in that style. The PS3 games, like you said, probably won't even touch them because I can't be bothered turning on my PS3 anymore. But again, for
From
people
Dust would be cool if it could be played on PS4 because that was kind of interesting at the time. But
yeah, that looks alright, and probably Mad Riders. Me, I love my racing games. Maybe I'll.
You've played it before though. It's no different than just playing like Trackmania and that.
No, that's right. And the Vita games look all right as well. But I think it's not bad value this month for people who are looking for value for money from their PlayStation Plus, because a lot of people are just screaming out like, it's not delivering and the games aren't there. So I think if you look at it, Resident Evil on the Australian PlayStation Store is what, 20, maybe $30?
Yeah, $24.95, I think.
Devastation. Yeah, Transformers Devastation, I think officially costs $50. I've seen it at stores for like, I think 20.
When you put everything in the shopping cart, it's $170 total. So
that's right. Yeah. So you can't complain. I think that's not a bad lineup. Curious to see the Christmas one. Like, will they do something big for Christmas? Will there be another kind of maybe not a AAA game, but something, I know Ubisoft's obviously having their big kind of anniversary stuff going on now. Will there be like an Assassin's Creed or something?
Do you ever read the comments on the blog site when they post this PS Plus announcement? People always mention Killzone and Knack like one of the first 2 games on PS4.
That's right.
Do you even want to see those games?
Knack, not really. Killzone, again, if I've wanted to play, I really like the Killzone series, but for whatever reason, the PS4 version has just never interested me. If I'd wanted to play it, it's been, I think, as low as like $19 even digitally, and I still haven't been tempted for it. And I don't know, like I think maybe at some point we will see Killzone or The Order or something like that. But, I think PS Plus launched, Sony was still in that mode of just going after Microsoft. They were number 2 in a big way. They launched PS Plus. It came out at like the tail end of the PS3 when there was just thousands of games.
And it was optional then, right? So
That's right, and it was optional, and they were
Developers weren't giving away their games to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. It was easy, for EA to go, yeah, here's Mass Effect, and Activision would go, here's whatever, and they were just giving away like all the good games at the time. Batman was on there, and Tomb Raider, and all sorts of stuff, and then when the PS4 launched, obviously, there's not that many games to start off with. I had to build the library up. I think now, as the PS4 is getting older and older and there's more and more titles, I think you will start seeing more of these kind of games because the library's so big. We still don't know is how does PS Plus actually work in terms of like what's the deal there, because how much does Sony pay the developers for every download and things like this, and there's those stories that developers have to pay Sony for the traffic that goes through the PlayStation Network when their games are downloaded, and there's how does so there's all, how does it all come together? We don't know. But
I always wondered how much money the Rocket League guys made when they decided to put their game straight away.
Well, and I think that's a classic example where they were probably I think a little bit apprehensive themselves about launching their brand new game on PS Plus, because they probably thought, look, we're going to give it away for free, quote unquote free. Everybody's going to download it, and that's going to be the end of our game. But again, first we don't know what was the deal, how much do they get, because you still kind of, again, quote unquote, buy the game because you add it to your shopping cart. So does Sony still pay the developer X amount for each time that it's purchased through PlayStation Plus?
They must do, right?
One. Yeah. And second of all, you look at a game like Rocket League. Rocket League has just become huge, and it took off thanks to PlayStation Plus because it was
very smart with their microtransactions and the way they modeled.
Exactly. Then they let them build the microtransactions and the DLC, and it helped them build a community, because if they launched at $29.95 for an indie title, how many people would have played it? Exactly. How many people would have played it? Whereas it's on PlayStation Plus, everybody played it.
And I went out and bought the PS4 theme and a few of the DLC.
Exactly. So I think Rocket League really showed to developers you can, if you've got a good product, this can actually help you because it builds your online community. Yeah. And if you then follow it up with a strong DLC microtransaction, mechanic behind it, it can actually really help your title. So we still don't know how PS Plus works in the background. There's so many who knows what kind of deals and maneuvers and things are going on behind the scenes. But when you look at it on the face of it, look, Microsoft have always made you pay for Xbox Live. Sony are trying to cash in on the same thing. Now you get Resident Evil, Transformers, a couple of PS3 games, a couple of Vita games for free. If you're fully invested in the Sony ecosystem,
universe,
it's a pretty good value proposition. Even if you've only got a PS4, Resident Evil and Transformers for what, $5? Let's say you bought it, or if you bought a one-off, 1 month only subscription, will cost you what, $10, and you get to play these games. Not bad, I think. So I think we're going to see better and better titles, and I think this is a pretty good month for them.
What about the upcoming week? Obviously, as I said, there's a massive amount of games coming out, like Gears of War, the Tomb Raider for the PS4 finally, WWE. What else? What are you interested in? There's a massive list here.
It's really starting to hit now. I think this is one of the first big weeks.
It is a massive week,
and it's just going to get
right before VR comes out too.
Yeah, and look, I mean, even it's so big that there's even a Wii U title, Paper Mario Color Splash for the Wii U. And then obviously, you've got Mafia 3. You've got your Duke Nukem 3D 20th anniversary.
I don't know if you've ever played Five Nights at Freddy's, but it is an amazing game series, and it's basically where
Well, I've seen it. It's pretty big on Steam now, isn't it? And
it's like a YouTube favorite game where you a reaction jump scare thing. That's really good. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, So I don't know. Is that's a new one of those? Is it? Or
I'm pretty sure it's a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got that. You've got Dragon Quest Builders for PS4. I think that's actually probably a pretty big release as well. Gears of War 4, that's just huge. Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Are you interested in that?
Which one's Gears of War?
Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider, yes, I am.
I want to wait for the sale there. There's no point paying full price for a game that's been out for like a year.
Well, that's what I'm thinking now. Look, I've already waited a year for it, and pretty much everybody said, like, yeah, it's actually a really good game. And I love that first Tomb Raider, sort of the new version of that. But like you said, I've waited a year for it now. I might as well keep waiting. The one I really, really want to play actually is Gears of War 4. Like, to the point, I mean, I was kind of, so like I said, there's some footage now that's been released officially. The first, I think, 30 minutes of the campaign, and some of the Horde mode stuff as well. And it's just classic Gears of War. But I think the way they started the campaign, because obviously now you're playing as Marcus Phoenix's son, but the sort of the first batch of the campaign is kind of some flashback sequences to some of those like classic. Get to play as the. I don't think Marcus Phoenix was in that first batch of gameplay, but you got to play some of those other classic characters, and it looks really good. I mean, War, it's just such a good-looking game. It just always plays so well. So I'm actually super excited for that, to the point where
more games need to do that flashback. I really liked how Uncharted did it when Nathan Drake was a kid.
Yeah, that's right, because it just kind of, I mean, obviously this isn't that where
no,
it's still like straight into the shooting. There's no actual, but I think it was just kind of a way for them to be able to let you play with some of those classic characters instead of straight away jumping into the new ones. But I mean, that game looks awesome. I really want to play it. I've been eyeing off some graphics cards, maybe a 1060 or a 1070 to be able to hop onto Gears of War. So I'll be curious to see what the scores are around that. But yeah, like it's just the games are starting to drop now. It's going to be interesting, like leading up to Christmas now, like what sort of gets the big scores and what takes the lead going into Christmas. I think my money's on Battlefield 1. I think that's got a lot of hype behind it. Yeah, I mean, like we played it. We played a little bit of the beta. I mean, we're not big Battlefield guys.
I watched you be terrible at it. That's what happened.
That's right, yeah. And Battlefield's not for me, running around like a headless chook and just getting sniped repeatedly. But for people who are fans, I think looking at the feedback, generally everybody was like quite happy with it. It seemed to hit the right notes for most people. It looks like they're putting a bit of effort into the single player now as well. So my money's on Battlefield 1 to do really well.
It's going to be very interesting what wins Game of the Year this year, right? Because it's quite open.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's going to be interesting to see what now kind of really, which one of these titles delivers. Is Last Guardian going to be this, amazing thing? Gears of War 4, Xbox One doesn't have like the numbers behind it to just make it like the most hyped up game, but it's coming out on PC as well. So there's so many big titles coming out now. It's just going to be interesting to see what really sort of goes to number one between now and Christmas.
We're going to have to do a podcast about the Game of the Year. We're going to have to come up with a list and then break it down.
Yeah, we're going to have to do the Game of the Year special, but that means I think we're going to have to play a lot of games between now and Christmas because, like you said, this is where I think the contenders will probably be out of this batch for at least like half the list will probably be from this
November onwards.
I think so. Yeah. Looking at the calendar, it's just jam-packed. It's jam-packed, and the remasters have come out as well. Your Dead Rising, your BioShock, like the games just keep on coming. They've just squeezed in that Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary Edition World Tour. I don't even know what that is.
No, neither.
It's just another Duke Nukem 3D cash in, but like everybody's trying to get a bit of that pie before Christmas.
Are you actually counting remastered as part of the Game of the Year contenders? Doesn't have to be unique, original.
Look, depends how strict you want to be in your interpretation of it, but I think it's just titles released. So, I mean, if this is the first time you've played BioShock, I guess it could win your game of the year. Why not? That's the whole point of remasters.
It's cheating a little bit, personally.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, it wouldn't get my award, but yeah, it depends on how. Well, I guess we'll have to define those terms when it comes time to do that podcast and release our top 10 list on the site, just to see the clearly defined criteria for that.
We'll take off remasters. That's about it for the podcast this week, unless you've got anything else you want to quickly talk about.
No, I think that's it. We're all good.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Edin, and we will catch everybody next time this week. Probably talking more VR. But until then, bye-bye.
Good night.
Catch ya.